Safety first. Yeah, safety first is the message today. And we have to have safety first, because safety first is something we've got to have because of the Ephesians 6 verse 12 1 to 18 talks about the whole armor of God, and we need the whole armor of God, and we need to have safety first. Because I was like checking out about Charles Grandison Finney, where safety first was a point for him in his life that he dealt with the Holy Spirit, because he was troubled. He was doing working as a lawyer, and he was troubled by the words of God that came in line with his study of law. The Bible was there too, to do with law. So he went into the forest on his lunch break, and whilst he went into the forest in his lunch break, he spent a lot of time in prayer. And sometimes we need to just get away from God, away from people to get God. Let me correct that. We have to get away from people to get God. And it's sometimes that is the case, that he spent a lot of time away from people in the forest, praying, rolling in the mud, stuff like that. But in the presence of him in the forest, and the liquid of love, God filling his soul, and he got the Holy Spirit, and he was filled with the Holy Spirit. Then he talked about the Holy Spirit. He spent time in the forest in prayer. And I also feel I need to get away sometimes and pray. And the forest, places like that where you're away from people, sometimes it's the very best to get away, to pray and to seek God, because it's how you're going to get his presence. And people can distract you, and they can distract you from your consecration. And I can understand why he took time away, in the consecration. We got to understand that, in the consecration that he had with God, people come near him and get convicted, and the presence of God was so much around him that people would get convicted. They would get convicted by being around the man of God, Charles Finney. They would face conviction. And he was at Oneida County, and they had a Rochester revival, and one of the biggest revivals, and it stirred in 1904 with Evan Roberts. The revival there, it stirred that revival. And this is the case that God done with him, that he stirred that revival, the 1904. It was the influence of that, it stirred. And his prayer life was second to none. And it stirred this type of revivals. And it was second to none, this revival that took place in the 18th century. Charles Finney came over to London, England, and he went to places like England, and he carried the gospel across the sea over from the States over. And he was the Oberlin College revivalist. And there was people in the slave trade, he abolished that, helped to abolish that. And people of color would come to his college, and he would openly welcome him. And it was the first in America, I think, that Oberlin College received people of color, because there was a racism thing going on there, the slavery and all that. I don't want to go too much into that details, but these things were going on.